All right, greetings everybody. It is post January. Here we are in the month of February, and surprisingly today, we didn't get a ton of spoilers quite yet for FS7 remake or rebirth, I should say, not remake. Remake's been out for a while. Yeah, that's next week's state of play. But hey, you're not here for that. You're here to find out about the new version of Dario. So today we're going to be taking a look at the data. And apologies for everybody out there. You know, it happens every once in an incredibly rare amount of time that Umbra gets really, really lucky. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. Essentially, I didn't want to stream because I was waiting on seeing whether or not this character was any good. I mean, so far, the characters that have come out have been generally pretty interesting. Lucio's been really good. I think Shadow Lynx is also really good. Love her design. And Thunder Astraeus, of course, more than speaks for himself on how successful he's been on JP. But Umbra has been feeling more than a little bit of unit fatigue ever since the 4th anniversary, for better or worse. And I was really planning on just absolutely holding off to see whether or not this character is incredibly OP. And the early answer is that he is very strong. How strong? Yet to be seen. But let's take a look at this limit burst. And as always, these ones have been just fantastic lately, and I think this one is absolutely really cool. It's nice to see Dario, one of the most popular characters since the game's inception, get an upgrade, and as most people have said, and I am absolutely in agreement, a long overdue upgrade. Really, Dario probably should have gotten this much sooner. So yes, there is a new map with a new weapon. We're going to be checking out all of that in the data today. But first, I want to bring up just in my wind party, which is primarily, as you can see, physical. There are a magical unit in here, so this is probably not going to be incredibly, accurate. But let's take a look at this. And I'm going to talk about someone in my guild who I've seen in a 3-man party. So this is the friend unit version of this. We're looking at this character, 103 speed, 13,000 HP, 1100 magic, 41 defense, 36 spirit, 35 single target resistance, and 45 AoE resistance. And honestly, just looking at this unit, these stats are fantastic. Really, I mean, this is what you want to see from a tank-based character, to have a lot of HP and a lot of defensive capabilities, and potentially some really good magical, since this character is a magic damage dealer. Now, let me just see here. I think I misplaced it, so I'm going to have to go find it again. But in the meantime, we are going to get distracted by trying to figure out where that is. I thought I had it saved on my phone, but I guess I didn't. Here we go. So in a 3-man party consisting of Flag Glassy, Wind Veritas, as well as the new version of Dario, 18k HP, 1300 magic, 45 defense, 30 spirit, 40 accuracy, 24 evasion, 106 speed as he almost drops his phone, 27 single target, and 43 AoE. So it's very clear that this character can straight be absolutely dynamite with the correct equipment, espers, and obviously a few other things such as trust mastery stones and whatnot. But you take a look at this unit in the party that we're looking at now, and actually we have pretty good resistances across the board against multiple damage types. And yes, so all right, getting ahead of myself before, we are not supposed to be making judgments, just supposed to be taking a look at the data. So starting off, let's go with the sword, because the sword is a katana and a magic katana, and these things are rare. We want to see more and more of these always, just because for certain other characters, Blade Soul type characters, I've really been wanting more magic katana options, and this one does work for multiple characters. Slash attack resistance penetration of 20, single target resistance of 8 for multiple jobs, and spirit penetration of 20 with a 169 magic stat is overall pretty nice, and I like this new one quite a bit. I mean, it gives some defensive, but also gives a fair amount of offensive too, and that's generally looking pretty good. Now, talking about Dario's TMR, which is another piece of equipment that we need to take a quick look at. I mean, stat-wise, 520 HP, 6 defense, 14 spirit, and 8 critical evade. Now, I think that this is pretty good, but the thing about Dario that we're about to get into is Dario himself can equip the super armor from the wave battle. I'm blanking on what it's called on global right now, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And that piece of armor probably completely supplants this for use of other trust masteries that are really good. But here we're looking at Grant Shell for 3 turns, as well as granting a, upon hit for self, 25% chance to inflict silence, which, sure, giving a status effect to all of your abilities, even if it's not necessarily the highest chance, is kind of interesting. So I'm going to put this TMR on the one to watch sort of thing, even though it may not ever end up being anything too major. It also might not be too minor either. Now, let's take a look at this character. And as always, one of the first questions that I usually get asked that I just need to address more, is the character limited? And yes, he is. He is semi-limited. He is limited for every time, you know, his type of banners come back like the another story characters that came before him. He is a 100 cost, 3 move, 1 jump, Red Mage and Grimoire Keeper as subs. And interestingly, he can equip armor, helmet, and accessories, which, you know, looking at him, I would never have called that, but great news for a defensive tank type character. We already talked about his Trust Mastery, so Master Ability will give him magic damage, taken 10% reduction, as well as AoE resistance of 5. Dream Ability is HP of 15% and Elemental Chain of 30 for resistance, and all of these things just essentially make this guy very damage resistant, more towards magic, but and chains, but still very, 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 very strong. Now, let's take a look, I guess, at the supports, then we'll go into the sub jobs and what it will cost you before going into the main kit. So, supports, really, really strong supports for his own job. Move and agility up, I always like on a tank, just because you want them to get out and in front. And Dario, as we're about to see, has some range issues. So this one, I think, is almost essential. And his other one ain't no slouch either. Spirit of 12, single target resistance, debuff, effect weakening, which makes him harder to get through as a tank. And also an increased chance of being targeted, which is permanent, which is, of course, always very, very good. But he also has some good options. Initial AP and magic damage increase from Red Mage, as well as Spirit and Magic resistance, are both viable options. And defense and Spirit penetration and magic and HP offer him some other alternatives. Point being, I think that he has a burden of wealth here, just from how many support skills he has that he would want to run. Different situations, sure, but absolutely, I think that this is more than good enough for a bunch of options. Speaking of which, let's talk about his counters. First off, his new counter all damage at 20% chance with increasing his own HP by 20%, is a pretty strong counter that can keep him alive. And as we've seen, is a lot of HP to potentially make this really valuable. Taking a look at Red Mage, chance to counter all damage, magic damage with a 200% chance magic evade. Probably the least valuable one, as we will talk about in a bit, but just because he is so strong against magic already. And Grimoire Master, countering all damage with a decreased chance of being targeted while increasing AoE resistance. Personally, I've seen his kit. He's not going to be bad on hate generation, so you could run this in theory, even though you are getting a decreased chance of being targeted. Because you're getting so much AoE resistance, it could end up paying off better than you expect. Either way, at least a couple of nice counters, and a third option that really isn't bad, except for the fact that he's already kind of good there. All right, talking about his sub jobs is a little bit disappointing. First off, Red Mage. Red Mage, he has some healing, he has some status defect, he has status effects, and he has the decreased spirit, dispel, auto revive on very short range with a double hit. I think that Red Mage here might be good in some situations, but for the most part, I think it's generally a pretty easy pass. Grimoire Master, on the other hand, is a bit better because it does give him some other options for damage. It gives him another 100% hit chance while reducing counters from opponents. He can restore HP for himself and allies, which is not necessarily a bad option to have. Some debuffing, and also grants the effect of reducing AP, providing that his Protect is in effect, which basically means that he has access to Protect at all times. What you're giving up in exchange off of his main job is this. You're essentially giving up this ability to cast Disable and an elemental resistance buff from you and your allies, which 25% across 3 elements, wind, earth, and light, is really nice. But my initial impression, if you were to just set one and kind of forget it, Grimoire Master seems to bring a lot to the table for this character. Looking at his main job, we have just a cascade of abilities to talk about. So first off, his basic one, decrease healing power by 70 for 3 turns for the target that gets hit by this. Something you will note across pretty much all of Dario's abilities is they're incredibly short range, but since he has so much hate, I think that the enemies will generally come to him anyway, so it's not really any kind of a problem as far as I can see. His second ability is to give himself auto revive and gain a counter skill for 3 turns for himself. Now, that counter skill is down here, chance to counter physical damage at 50% with reducing physical damage taken by 30. So auto revive, which he's almost certainly always going to cast, essentially makes him more damage reduction against physical attacks, which was something that we were always interested in, but it basically unlocks a new skill and is really good. Now, as for his Wall of Text ability, 7,500 HP magic damage barrier, which means that mages effectively can't really kill this guy as if they had much of a chance to begin with, reduces physical damage and magical damage taken depending on the attack area size. So the bigger the attack, the less damage it's going to do, up to 35% for 3 turns. It also has another ability, we'll talk about that in a second, and casts a couple of skills that boost around around your allies, and these are big diamond AoE area style thing. So first off is reduce magical damage taken for allies by 40%. So large magical AoEs are not going to do as much to your allies as well, which makes mages even less valuable in this situation, whether it's single target or AoE. Both are going to be pretty massively reduced at this point, which is really, really good. You're also looking at poison, sleep, and slow resistance, 50%. So it's an aura style protect against status effects, which is also very new and incredibly valuable. When it comes to talking about poison, poison is one of the things that Thunder uses with Thunder Astrius, and this kind of just shuts that down. Slow resistance is for A2, and sleep resistance from Fire and Helena. Long story short, this ability gets cast, it shuts down a lot of popular status effects. Not all of them, but it sure goes a long way to doing a fair bit, which is really, really nice. And the other ability that is in here is essentially giving him the effect to seal target's barrier destruction for 3 turns when an attack hits. Now, this is generally good, providing the opponent doesn't get it off first. I think that Dario range is too short for this to be really, really useful. But if it ever does land, mages will have no chance with this at all. But let's continue on. He also has some good offensive ability with a 200% mod that, decreases bravery by 30, which is pretty nasty, but also does piercing damage. Piercing damage is always interesting because it is really quite powerful and sometimes very, very underestimated by myself, for example. His next ability, damage of 165 mod with 100% hit chance, 30% chance to absorb the damage done, and automatically casts a second ability while increasing his spirit by 40 for a single turn. So it essentially boosts him up a lot before his neck covers him for essentially a turn. And 40 spirit is a lot. The other ability that is casted off of this is the heal ability. So it basically heals an opponent, an ally, for 25% of their HP, which is a strong heal. And it's an unconditional, like, based on his stats. It's just a flat percentage, which is pretty nice. It also increases his own chance of being targeted, so 8 generation, which is, as I know, quite good on a tank. So, hooray. But yeah, this ability is just so much value, potentially. You're dealing an AoE, you're getting chaining ability off of it, you're getting increased accuracy, and you're getting healing for a unit that really always wants more HP. And yeah, just protecting himself for an entire turn. And his last ability is job level 25. You can select up to 2 targets to spell, protect, and shell for the target and decrease the AP by 20. Honestly, it's pretty hard to call Dario anything other than a fantastic unit. There's so much in his kit that he can do, and it's just all looking generally pretty strong on paper without having tested it. The other thing that I really like is status effect protection for multiple type units. It just looks like it's going to be all around pretty good, but you have select, you have single target attacks, you have AoEs, you have healing, you have hate generation, you have healing for allies, you have piercing damage, you have HP barriers, and so many different effects that can all be triggered. He really is a absolute fantastic tank, and it's scary to think what this unit will be like with certain other key units. He is a auto re-raise one. Certainly that you can just throw this guy on a wind elemental team with wind spears and probably do really, really well. But you can, this guy is one of those A2 type characters where he can find his way into multiple different teams, providing that the VC support is there. I can see VC support with something like A2, where 2 characters that have barrier, destruction prevention could work really well off of one another, since both are pretty strong. And yeah, A2 likes those kind of characters and being with those. You can throw her with, you can throw Dario also with Helena and Vivi. The team essentially makes itself, since Sephiroth has been widely associated with Vivi. Those 2 jobs have many, many VCs that support this party, and if, as a matter of fact, support it even better than it was with Sephiroth, since Dario is a magic damage user too, which is also pretty scary. And then you look at just protecting auto re-raise on this character, and it kind of makes a heck of a lot of sense. This character, to me, rings true to a lot of the stuff that A2 was really great for, because he will just work with multiple elements. He's generally just strong all around. And while looking at his kit, there is no doubt in my mind that he is an absolutely shut down, a mage team style tank. I think it gets even better because he is quite resilient against physical damage too from initial impressions. He has a lot of damage resistance against major damage types, with the one that's probably his biggest weak point being shoot, which, sure, ice ranged, I guess that's going to be his big weakness. But if so, fine. That's the least of your concerns. And you can just pump this guy up with excellent armor, better armor than what you're seeing here. Trust masteries, which will push his stats even higher and even further beyond. And yeah, there's enough in his kit that he can potentially survive a lot of physical damage too, with auto re-raise potentially being protected, protect status effect from Grimoire Master, and an aura style effect that reduces physical damage the larger the AoE, meaning that the team has to focus more on single target, which, if you pump up a single target resistance, leaves you at kind of a brick wall. Tons of great supports, options, and counters. I see no problem with this, saying this unit is absolutely great at least from the data perspective. Next up, test them out. Field. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. See you later.